We welcome in our 1320 Kings insider and creator of the Kings Beat, James Ham. Kenny's got something he's got to get off his chest, though. So,
Hey, well, I thought about it too, and it might not be James who would have an issue with it. It might be Matt George, but we'll see. I don't know
Don't
if you guys saw.
confuse me and Matt George. Come on now.
Well, I don't know if you guys saw, my timeline, my Twitter timeline, but there was some kind of vague reporting, and it just kind of it got me going. I was like, if there's any truth to it, it needs to happen. Where I guess somebody talked to Jason Williams, White Chocolate, number 55, and he said, "I would love to be part of the organization again." I can't remember if he said it was like in a front office capacity but he wants to be part of the organization. And I got a soft spot for Jason Williams. That was my guy. But I'm like, yo, yeah, bring him back. I'm not saying he has to, like I said in the tweet, he ain't got to be president of basketball ops. I ain't saying that. But if there's a way to get Jason Williams back in here with the organization, I'm all for it. Now, people are like, no, don't do that no more. Page up, body. You're reliving the past too much. Move on to the future. I understand that. Jason Williams and Chris Webber are different. If they want to be a part of anything that's going on here, you'll find a way. Even if it's like an Allen Iverson in Philadelphia situation where he's like some kind of ambassador or they gave him some kind of title so he can be there as much as he wants to be. But Jason Williams, especially Jason Williams, because he don't ever come back. I need Jason Williams back here. They got Brett Favre and Boobie Gibson courtside. If you don't find a way to get Jason Williams courtside at the Kings game, that's what I need.
Okay. I don't have any problems with people coming back and being part of what's happening. I don't. It just depends on what role. Like, clearly with Jason Williams, like a player personnel, like somebody who came in and like mentored young guys, I guess might work somewhat. I don't know if you could even put him on the coaching staff because his knees aren't great and stuff like this. So it's not like he's going to be out there like running drills with guys and stuff. Yeah, I mean, a franchise has been in Sacramento for like 36 years, and there have been so many players that have come back and been part of it, and had different roles. I'm not like totally anti. I think with Chris Webber, Webber is a really, really big personality. So if you're bringing a Chris Webber in, you got to have like that. He wanted to run the Kings, no question. He wanted to run the Kings. He wanted to be the general manager and all that stuff. I don't know if that works. We went down that path with Vlade, and you could probably say that Chris Webber is much more qualified to be in that role than Vlade Divac, but that doesn't mean that either one of them are really qualified. Just one is more qualified than the other, because of course, Chris has been around the game as a color commentator for the last 15 years since his retirement. So whatever it is, yeah, I mean it's an interesting debate. Like I really do wish that Jason Williams was around more. I don't know that I've ever had a real conversation with Jason, and I also don't think. And all of the car rides back and forth to the Bay Area and all the time that I've known Doug, I don't think we've ever truly discussed the Jason Williams, Mike Bibby transfer there. Maybe we talked a little bit about, just like adapting and stuff like that, what he brought differently, but not really like the personal behind the scenes, like how that felt to watch a guy who is such a huge personality in your building leave like that, and sort of the cause and effect. Yeah. Interesting.
Hey, real quick, Dame, what did Pager do?
What do you mean?
Like with the Kings? What was his role? He was like
he was the assistant general manager. Yeah.
Really though? Or was that the title that was
assistant to the general manager?
Oh yeah. There we go. He was
Kenny was like, I don't get it. What's that mean?
Yeah, I got that.
I know you did.
Yeah, he was the Dwight Schrute of the Sacramento Kings. Yes,
better dressed.
That's hilarious. Yeah, so Page started as a player personnel director, and then he got a bump to the general manager of the G League squad or D League, whatever it was at that point. Even though I don't know that he really wasn't the general manager.
Yeah,
There,
that's what I'm saying.
like
Yeah.
McLeish and guys like that were behind the scenes doing a lot of stuff. Yeah, and then Pedro, I mean, he was Vlade's number two, and then Ken Catanella and him were both assistant general managers. So Ken got to do all like the paperwork, and the other two got to hang out and talk basketball and come up with some ideas for trades on a whiteboard. There one time I was, I think it was media day, and I looked up and Vlade was up. Okay, so we all remember when Vlade, like they signed some guy, and I can't remember who it was. And in the picture that his agent posted had like Vlade's board, right? His
Yeah.
draft board.
Yeah.
Like I was like, oh, so there was this one time I was in, I think it was media day. I look up and like Vlade's looking down and I wave at him. And then he smiles and he goes, there's a big whiteboard right there. And he writes, people Vlade will trade for. And he looks down at me and like, yeah, he had a sense of humor about everything. So I love it when these guys are around. They're all really, really cool people to have around your franchise. Whether I'm going to make them a general manager or an assistant general manager, that's a whole nother ballgame.
My favorite part, though, was the fact that it was a dry erase board. Because I've seen some like draft boards. I've seen multiple draft boards, and they're like tiles that you move around. Like, so you can, no, we're going to move this guy here, this guy here. No, hey, Vlade's like wiping it off with his sleeve and writing in a new name with a dry erase marker.
I think the best part, too, is that there was a picture that someone had printed out of something that, of like, a Photoshop that Kings fans made of the Vlad father.
Mm-hmm.
It's on the board as well. So that to me was like, oh yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, yeah, good stuff.
Jay Will, if you're listening to this, come on home, man. Come on home.
Jay Will, definitely a big fan of D'Lo and KC.
His son is.
Hey, so what did you and Brendan talked about last night that was so spicy you didn't want to post a podcast today?
Yeah, you know what? Okay, so first of all, I'm just gonna like absolve Brendan from everything. That's the first line of attack.
Brendan was letting him fly last night, huh?
No, we so before we got on the happy hour, we did record a podcast and it was late, and I kind of went off about the Richaun Holmes situation, and sometimes like you got to pull back a little bit because as opposed to the opinion piece that was in the Sacramento Bee, sometimes it's better as a reporter to not be the story. And that's something that like I choose not to do most of the time. Don't be the story, right? Let the game, let the situation, let whatever is happening be the story. You don't need to be the story. And I'm just, it's a weird situation to me because, I've known Richaun for a couple of years now. And like these things are never fun to deal with. Like, and this is not the first time we've dealt with a situation like the Richaun Holmes situation here in Sacramento. We talk about like off the air, we were talking about, former players getting DUIs and coaches and stuff like that. Like I've had to cover some of those. We had to race out one time because Thomas Robinson decided to run over a curb going like 70 miles an hour, ripped the whole bottom side of his like $250,000 car out. Just the whole thing is leaking out on the sidewalk, and we went to make sure he was okay because it was right down the street from the arena. Anyway, I went back and I read the piece a couple of times that was written in the Bee, and like, look, these things, they have to be out there, right? Like there's no way to hide from something like that. And I did some digging, and sort of there's a couple of things in that piece that struck me that kind of stand out. And number one, I'm never going to defend any player. I don't care who it is. If they're in a domestic violence situation, if it's proven that they actually did something wrong, especially to a child or their spouse or anything else, I'm never going to defend you. And to be honest, like my relationship with Darren Collison completely changed when he got himself into his situation. But that kind of leads me to like, I'm confused. Like the Bee is like I've grown up on the B. They're, to me, like, they do incredible work, and they have incredible reporters who do incredible work. I don't understand how you write an opinion piece and break that news. If you want to write an opinion piece after you break that news, that's fine with me. But when you write an opinion piece and you're breaking the story at the same time, like, where are my quotes? Where is the language from the the complaint? Like, where is it? Because I don't see it. And so then it becomes like you just type in Richaun Holmes into a Google search, and it's nothing but accused, accused, accused. And I get that. I mean, that's the world we live in. It's everything is aggregated and spit out in different ways. But the fact that there is no clarification on the domestic violence like claim, really, to me, it kind of, it's hard. It's hard to read. So I did my due diligence. I went out and, I called people or got calls from people. I tried to get the complaint itself without going to one of the two attorneys, but through other means. And that's where this comes down to. It's a family court situation. It is a restraining order that's part of, a custody battle. And family court, or as they quote it, private court, those documents aren't available. So that tells me that, number one, somebody gave those documents. You can start tracing where, like, the information came from, clearly, right? And it's not stated in the article. There is no, I don't know if they have the documents themselves or if they're just listening to someone telling them what's happening in that private court. There's too many questions. And again, you can write an opinion piece all you want on that about domestic violence and all that stuff. But there's just, a couple of things that stick out. And again, I'm not going to defend Richaun Holmes at all in this situation until I know more of the facts and we get through this. But I will say this, he's not being, this is not a criminal case. Like, there is not an arrest warrant put out for Richaun Holmes. There has not been. And I think that's where I start getting into this, like, the he said, she said, and what exactly is going on here. But, like, if you're going to write an opinion piece and you're going to say something like, I'm not convicting Richaun Holmes ahead of his court date, and then after, like, an ad placement, you come down and put the words, I believe Alexis, as your next thing, then you are convicting him. Because if you believe one person and you don't believe the other, then you are. And there's nothing to convict him on in this situation because there is no criminal case.
Yeah.
If you understand me. So, there's some other things. I get why these articles need to be written, and I fully believe they do need to be written. I think that, we have to represent victims and if there are victims in this case, they need to be well represented and all that stuff. But the last thing I'll bring up is there's an entire section on how the NBA does absolutely nothing about domestic violence, does absolutely nothing. And they list Jackson Hayes, Lance Stevenson pushing his girlfriend down a flight of stairs, Dante Cunningham. Jackson Hayes is currently, I think he's still 13 counts against him, like in some court somewhere as of right now. Greg Oden. And some of these date back, like Greg Oden's 2014. Lance Stevenson he's a 19-year-old coming into the league in like 2010. And so here's the question I have. Where's the mention of Darren Collison? Because if you want to set up a straw man argument that the NBA does nothing, they do absolutely nothing, and the Sacramento Kings do absolutely nothing about these situations. Okay. Well, what about the 8-game suspension that Darren Collison got for pleading guilty to headbutting his spouse? There's no mention. And it's not that that's some obscure case in some other city. That's in your city. That's your team that you're covering. That's in the time frame that you're talking about. And to omit that actually happened here and that there was actually 8 games, like they even throw Richaun Holmes has yet to be suspended or had any disciplinary action from the league. Well, that's because in America you're innocent until proven guilty.
But you're not.
Yeah, I agree.
But you're not.
But we're still not even to the point where we know anything of the facts. And again, if Richaun Holmes is in fact guilty of what is claimed by this reporter, because I haven't seen the actual complaint, what is claimed by this reporter, then, whatever happens to him, and he deserves whatever he gets. That's my approach always. Like, if you're gonna smack around a 6-year-old kid, then you get whatever that is coming to you. But I want to know more, and I also think that, like, as a journalist, that should have been a straight journalist story to break it. And then if you want to do an opinion piece on top of that, that's fine. If you want to do the Richaun Holmes reaction and then add in some fan reaction, which I like, stunned by that as well. Like, why are we doing fan reaction to this? Then, that's fine. Like, if that's what you want to, I didn't like the approach. I don't like it being, like, it just doesn't come across as, it comes across as an opinion, but an opinion piece breaking a pretty dramatic story that impacts the lives of an entire group of people, an entire set of people. And I'll also say this, I have had talks with the Kings and other people around the team and stuff like that. And I'll tell you this, like, Richaun Holmes has been going through this custody battle for like 2+ years. Everyone on the team knows about the custody battle that he's going through this entire time. I've had him on a podcast where he talks about how much he loves his son. It's a huge thing that he always brings up about, his son. He's very focused on his son. But the thing when it comes to the team is there has been like tons of court proceedings and stuff like this. Richaun Holmes has asked for other days off, and they've granted him time to go deal with situations because he's been in a custody situation for a long time. Trevor Ariza was in a why am I drawing a blank? A custody battle. Yeah, a custody battle for a long time, right? There were times where he stepped away from the team because he had court dates, right? So what the Kings don't do is they don't ask for every single bit of information that comes in from these custody. It's not like the Kings get a CC'd on an email when there's some sort of thing. So from what I know, the team did not know about the claims against Holmes when he asked to step away from the team. They knew that he had a court date coming up. They knew that he's been in a situation, but it's a ongoing situation almost the entire time he's been on the Kings. And so you just thought it was another one of those situations to get hit with it afterwards. Like, and a team can't comment on a player. They can't put out a statement, like they can't comment on a personal decision. When someone steps away for personal reasons, they can't comment on it. Yeah. It's just like they couldn't tell us that Domantas Sabonis's wife had a baby. They couldn't tell us that. Or that another player's wife
and he
just
did,
had a
by
baby.
the way, for those who don't know why James just said that. Sabonis told you.
Well, he did, but
after the fact.
That's because I set it up and I said, hey, do you want to talk about why you missed a game on Wednesday? Right. And then he started smiling and told us about how, he's a proud papa. But those are situations where, like, again, as a reporter, you're in that situation. You're in a room and you're like, okay, how do I handle this very delicately? Because we don't know if something happened. We don't know, like, how the baby's doing, how the mom's doing. We don't know any of that stuff. Mm-hmm. So if you want to say something, you can say something now. If you don't want to say something, we'll just move on to the basketball, and that's fine. I can have an off-the-record conversation with them every once in a while and just pull somebody aside and say, hey, everything okay? But we're in a different world with COVID and all that stuff. So anyway, that's the end of my conversation. Like, you guys can ask me whatever you want, but yeah, it's not about.
They're difficult stories to talk about. Like I mentioned, there's. Go ahead, Casey.
No, I was just gonna say, and I agree with James. I'm not trying to talk bad about anybody. The people at the B, they had a job to do. I just think there was a different way that could have been taken care of. Like you mentioned, have a story that just talks about what you talked about. And then if you still feel the need to have an opinion piece, that's fine too. But it should have been two different stories in my opinion. I thought it was handled wrong. And I feel like somebody's got to be there to to step up and say, hey, wait a minute, I know you got this, but let's go about it a different way. Like those type of things go through too many people. The young lady, her name escapes me right now, but she didn't just post it on SACB by herself. You know,
Nope.
there are so many people who go and see that, and somebody's got to be there to be like, wait a minute, guys, let's figure out a different way to handle this. And nobody did.
Well, that and wait a minute, we just omitted a player that went through this in Sacramento and got an 8-game suspension. So like your straw man argument like falls apart instantly. You know,
And the King, I did look this up to be sure because you don't want to blurt this out. The King suspended Ron Artest. I know that was before your time, but
yeah.
the Ron, I remember like as you were talking, I was thinking, didn't Ron have an incident here? And he did, and he was suspended for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I think sometimes reporters bleed sports together, and you're looking at the Deshaun Watson situation, obviously in the forefront of everyone's mind, in the NFL's mind, or in front of the NFL, and it's in the forefront of your mind. So you just you basically lump professional athletes together, and regardless of it being basketball, who is regularly been stricter on punishments, particularly under David Stern, significantly stricter on punishments versus the NFL, who has been notoriously lenient on punishments.
Yeah.
They're not the same, and you don't just lump them together because they get paid to play be an athlete.
Yeah. I was gonna say that's the thing. Like the outrage and being upset. I completely understand it. I'm not going to tell anybody how to feel, but especially when you're doing something professionally, there's a certain way to go about it. Don't let in those situations maybe your anger outweigh the decision to go about it a different way.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, these situations are always a mess, and they require kids' gloves. You know, we have to be super cautious with the way we talk about it, the way that we, have an opinion about it, everything else. Like, you want as much information as possible in order to be fair. And somebody asked, someone brought up in the chatty house, Johnny Do It, if it was weird that Jason Anderson asked about Alvin Gentry about it. And no, that the answer is no. Because if he didn't, there was someone else waiting to ask that question as well. As a representative for the team, a head coach who's put out in front of there was no Monty McNair press conference. There was no Vivek Ranadive press conference. In this situation, just like how the Maloofs hung Paul Westphal out to dry and made him answer every question about relocation when the team was trying to move to not Seattle, but Anaheim. Like a head coach gets hit with these questions. And look, I'll even say this. Like, I'm the guy who asked Terrence Davis about his situation because I did, in my research, I found out that the Toronto Raptors had never allowed Terrence Davis to speak to the media since he had been in a domestic violence situation and been arrested and had all these situations. He had never spoke to the media. So, like, I told the media directors knew that I look, the moment that he has a big game, he has to answer. He has to have that. We have to have that conversation. And I don't want to tear a player apart or anything else, but that's our job. It's to be responsible and to like, hey, look, you have a situation off the court. What exactly are you doing? Like, what's happening there, or like bring us through the process. And that was a really hard thing to ask a player. And I waited till the end of a media session. So it would be like, it would just be different. It wouldn't be like part of the main front part that was just about the game and the whatever 24 points he scored or whatever. But in those situations, you have to ask the questions, and it's very uncomfortable. It's not fun to ask those questions. I just want to cover basketball. I don't want to cover DUIs and domestic violence and all this stuff, but it's part of the job. And so, yeah, we'll just try to cover it the best we can as it goes forward. And, I want what's best for everybody involved. I don't want what's best for Richaun Holmes. I want what's best for everyone involved, especially a 6-year-old kid. And so I'm hoping this thing works out. But, Custody battles are crazy, and all kinds of things happen in custody battles. And I'm not going to make some statement that a mother wouldn't do this in a custody battle, because that's just not true. It's just not true. Like these things, people have killed people in custody battles. Like all kinds of things happen in custody battles. So anyway,
let's talk basketball.
Let's talk basketball.
That's what you want to do. We will talk about the Battle of the Titans this weekend. It is the Sacramento Kings versus the Orlando Magic. The irresistible force meets the immovable object. We will discuss that with James Ham when dealing with Casey return here on Sacramento's #1 sports station, ESPN 1320. Clear. Nice job, James.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's good.
Yeah,
shit.
sorry. I like tiptoeing through it. I want to. Yeah, it's hard, and you don't want to say something like I don't know this writer, but again, I don't, just by the way it was written, I don't even know if it was domestic violence against her and the child, or just the child, because the wording is so unspecific, and that's what's going out there.
There was, you talked about tracing where the information comes from. There's a very clear line in there that goes, okay, I get what we're doing here. And there was a quote in there that said, took out his frustrations on the boy. And it was in quotes, and it was like, okay, that's what we're doing. All right.
Well, I mean,
that was the thing that I saw when we were doing the show, where it's like, let's not touch this.
Yes.
Let's just leave this alone. We'll read it at 4, deal with it tomorrow.
Yeah. And look, at some point, again, if you have the paperwork in front of you, then you need to quote it. You need to put in the specific line, the lawyerese speak. You need to drop it in, because that's the job. Because if not, that is nothing but an opinion piece, but an opinion piece that completely runs over a franchise, runs over an NBA player, runs over an entire family. Like, you just hit them with a bus. Yeah. And I get that story needs to be out there. I'm not saying that story doesn't need to be out there. It does. It has to be out there. If there is that claim in a court of law, it has to be out there. But again, we're not talking it's just a weird gray area. Yeah. And yes, some people know, but others don't. My wife is an attorney. So I do talk about things like this with my wife, and we do have a ton of friends in the attorney world. I did try to get the documents.
Everything James
myself.
just said was written, by the way. It was all written. From the last 27 minutes were written by his wife. Here's how you can discuss it and no one gets in trouble. Read this, James.
Yeah. No. Yeah, I mean, really, it's I don't like talking about these situations, but at the same time, people need to, you have to look at these things with a critical eye. You have to, you need to really, really delve into these things. You need to follow the sources. You need to look why the spin is the way that it is, where, and all of those things lead to, it's hard. Again, I like to take in as much information as possible in these situations before I start making claims that I believe someone or I don't believe someone.
That is difficult. You know what's easy though? Hitting the thumbs up. There's almost 300 people watching, over 280 watching just on YouTube with 60 likes. That's bad. I get it. D-Lo begs for likes, brought to you by Dave Garcia Designs, DaveGarciaDesigns.com. Could you please hit the thumbs up? Not only should we be well past 100, man, we should be at 200 right now. This is honestly just lazy. Right. Dr. David, have you hit the thumbs up? Mark Dub, have you hit the thumbs up? Warren, I know Warren did. Leezy, look, Leezy just got his in. Steven, you get yours in. Just hit, keep hitting. We just keep going. I can see the number going up. Just keep it going.
Hey, Damien, real quick, I just want to let you know, if you want to get ready for bowling, you can go get a Red Bull over at Justine's Dad.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thanks, Justine, and thanks to our wonderful crew at Odyssey who invited us.
I'm putting us on the emails. They're gonna take our name.
Jesse, go grab a Red Bull, pal. There's a spring party, James, at Strikes in Roseville. It's a big company party from 2 to 5. I don't know. We're like Fresh Prince, man. How come they don't want me?
Only important people in the company are going to be there. They want to make sure everybody can get there. That's important, and they have to adjust the times accordingly.
It's a cold world.
Yeah. No,
they did give us till 5. So if somebody that lives in Elk Grove wants to go, they can get there about 30 minutes after it's done.
You should have just shot the show from the parking lot at Strikes. Like, I wish I could go in
live,
but I got a show to do. Holding on to the glass.
Just hi, this is our boss. Hey, boss, why do you hate us? Why do you refuse to let us be a part of company celebrations?
Yeah.
No, it's fine. We're just, the money makers over here. Mind us. Mind us. Hang on, guys. We're coming back. We're the nerdy kids not invited to the party. Stilo and KC, brought to you by McQueen and the Violet Fog, the smoothest gin in the world, handcrafted in Brazil. We appreciate you. I'm sure you were not invited to the company party as well, so you decided to tune into us. We appreciate you for being with us. You can watch, by the way, on twitch.tv/ESPN1320, youtube.com/ESPN1320, and we're on Twitter for the day because Facebook was giving us problems. Imagine that. Facebook creating problems. Who knew?
Man.
So we're live. We're live on Twitter over there for the
tragic.
Day. James Ham, our 1320 Kings insider and creator of the Kings Beat, with us. Heavy start to this conversation. So I don't think you could have outlined the Richaun Holmes situation any better than you did. So we'll move on to the clash of the Titans this week with the Sacramento Kings taking on the Orlando Magic. You said barring a situation where the Sacramento Kings win 6 games in a row, you don't see De'Aaron Fox or Domantas Sabonis coming back. Well, James, 1 down, 5 to go, and Orlando is next. Serious question, though. I understand the situation like Sacramento, Portland, Indiana. Like, I get that. You still don't want to lose to those other 4 teams, though, do you? Like the Oklahoma Cities, the Houstons, Detroits, Orlandos. It's kind of like, all right, we got to go out there. We got to get that one. I know they don't want to lose any game. I understand that. Athletes, coaches, you don't want to lose any game. But you don't want to go out there and lose to the Magic, though.
Okay, so here's, what do we got? 8 games left? Is that what's left?
Yep. I think so, yeah.
What if they won all 8? And then you look at the Lakers' schedule, and the Lakers lost them all, and they end up with 30, 32, 33 wins, and the Kings end up with 34. Like, I hate to say the what if, but that's kind of like where the Kings are always like looking like, well, what if, So I get going into Indiana and beating the Indiana Pacers, especially, if you had Fox and Sabonis there to like kind of make it a full party. Still, that one hurt. I mean, God bless Buddy Hield and, live by the buddy, die by the buddy. They clearly lived by the buddy and died by the buddy.
And didn't Buddy dribble the ball off his foot to start the game?
First play of the game, he dribbled it right off his left foot and out of bounds. And then with 14 seconds left in the game, he just fumbled the ball out of bounds. And with his team up by 1, 14 seconds, all they had, like, if they foul him, he's like an 85, 86, 87% career shooter from the line.
It was looking very blue chip-ish with that move right there. But the other funny thing about that was the ball was inbounded to somebody else. Nobody was trying to foul him. Buddy sprints from his side of the court to the back court. Hey, I got it. They're going to foul. Give me the ball. I got this. And then he dribbles out of bounds.
I thought he was I don't know if you picked this up, James, in his media availability. He said, I made a mistake. And I thought he was very aware to not say, that was my bad. He was just like, I just made a mistake there and dribbled the ball off my foot. I thought he was very aware to not go, yeah, my bad.
I was waiting for the my bad or it'd be like that sometimes.
It'd be like,
Both of those. Yeah, I think it's facts. Yeah, so I think it's funny. His post game was very slightly self deprecating. We've seen Buddy Hield say, "Hey, I blew it, my bad." We've seen that before. But then his comment about he was just a stand in the corner
stand in
guy.
the corner.
That was wild.
Jesus, no, you weren't.
How do you learn not to cross King's Twitter yet? Like King's Twitter immediately finds
people nowadays.
Yeah, I saw that.
I'll say this too.
I saw that.
That was the other thing that happened on the pod. They got killed. I was downright rude about some of the comments, and I think Brennan just kind of sat there and laughed, oh no, James is coming unhinged. I mean, you get one of these really hard conversations to open a podcast, and then you switch from that to these comments, and the Marvin Bagley thing where he said, what did he say? He said,
everybody throw him lobs like this in years.
I just wonder why is he throwing shade at his dad and his little brother? Because those are the only dudes that he throws lobs to him when he's at home in Arizona playing on his own court in the middle of the season.
Because he's sure ain't playing in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't catch any lobs because you didn't play any games. That's unfortunate, but it is what it is. And the next time you set a pick will be the first time. And so when you do the pick and roll, then maybe your guard will actually hit you with the lob. But the fact that Marvin Bagley was never part of the 2-man game in Sacramento, the Kings wanted to do a 2-man game all the time. They love doing it with Richaun Holmes and with Tyrese Haliburton. Tyrese Haliburton is one of the best lob guys in the game. He is. And you played with him for a year and a half. So actually you played with him for 32 games because you were healthy for that many. So
the Marvin Bagley, I like Marvin Bagley. Just as a young man, I think he's a good young dude. I like his basketball skill set, but his constant revisionist history about everything that went wrong in Sacramento was somebody else's fault and not his own. It's disappointing to see. You know what I mean? Because I feel like he had every opportunity here. They embraced him as much as possible. Did he always see eye to eye with the coaches or whatever the case may be? No, but I also think some of it had to do with the fact. I remember, I don't think he'll mind us saying it, the professor, Jason Jones, was coming into his second year, Luke and the coaching staff put a lot into this was going to be almost like his offense, Marvin's offense. They were incorporating him a lot into what they were doing. And then he gets hurt in the first game of the season, could never really bounce back. Then if you're the Kings or Luke Walton or any other coach, how can you put that much trust as far as putting your whole game plan into a guy that you don't know is going to be there? It's just common sense. It's not a knock. They did not like Marvin or nothing like that, but he looks at it as everybody was conspiring against him. And it's disappointing to see, man.
They literally sacrificed their relationship with Nemanja Bjelica to give Marvin Bagley the starting job, and he played 13 games. I mean, and just destroyed their relationship with Nemanja because Nemanja was why is he starting over than me? He's not better than me. I'm a better basketball player than him. We can all discuss and debate that question all day long, but I mean, they did put a lot of stock into Marvin Bagley, and they gave him opportunities, especially there in second and third seasons. And I mean, I wish it would have worked out. I still think his skill set is somewhat close to what the Kings need. You start looking at guys around while we're watching the NCAA tournament. I'm watching Paolo Banchero, and his skill set is very similar to Marvin's, except for he's probably a little bit better creator, a little bit better shooter from the perimeter. But it's a similar skill set, and the Kings still need that skill set. They do.
Big deal. Your boy Chet got eliminated yesterday.
Yeah, I'll keep saying this. This is just an incredible tournament. It's good because when we look at the top 8 players, almost all of them were in it up until yesterday. And they're still going to be, so Jabari had been eliminated. Now Chet's eliminated, but we still and then of course Matherin got eliminated. But going into the Sweet 16, we still had Matherin. We still have again the two kids from Duke. You still have Jaden Ivey. You still have a lot of players that can step up and make an impact, and they're showing what they can do. I think again, like Banchero, he might have changed my mind a bit
Oh, man,
with
that's
his
what
play.
I'm talking about, James. I saw it. I was like, yo, this guy's he got a little something. He got
Okay,
some.
so I'll tell you how I handle those situations because I've watched quite a bit of him, but I like watching him yesterday. Number one, I'm still gonna say this: he's much better with a defensive-minded rim runner. Like
Mhm,
at center next to him.
mhm,
So you're
mhm,
watching all these kids that play alongside him that just go get it, that are attacking the rim, like flying in and are like your rim runners. So I still think that that's the case, but I then start to think, okay, who does he look like? What type of player can I compare him to? And I think one of the first guys that comes up is because of his high usage and stuff like that. It's like, does he look like Jason Tatum? Maybe like
mhm,
Jason Tatum, but like a much better body coming into the league than Jason Tatum had. Maybe. Does he kind of look like Tobias Harris? Maybe.
mhm.
Could you even look at like Michael Porter Jr. and say, does he look a little bit like Porter? And so then I start to like, what would Jason Tatum look like with Sabonis? And I think Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown would like be so successful with Sabonis, like setting them up as opposed to being so much like one-on-one stuff
Mhm.
that I'm like, okay, I can see that. And then again, Embiid and Jokic are probably the best two passing bigs, and so I think he can be a better Tobias Harris, more of like a first, second option versus Tobias, which I think is more of like a third option at the NBA level.
Mhm.
I think he can be like the power forward version of Porter Jr., but Porter Jr. is like a very, very good 3-point shooter. But again, like how successful he was last year playing off the ball, I really, really like that look. I mean, Porter was spectacular last season playing alongside Jokic. So yeah, I'm starting to like him a little bit more. I still have questions about not just it's not so much defense because I think he's okay defensively. It's he's not a natural shot blocker, and I think you do need a natural shot blocker next to Sabonis. And I think Jabari Smith Jr. is the same thing. Like I'm not sure he's a great shot blocker, but then again he's playing with a great shot blocker, so it might just be an opportunity thing. So yeah, I'm intrigued. I love the tournament. The tournament's been spectacular.
Yeah, it has. It's been great. I want to ask you something, James, because I came across these numbers on the internet, and I want to know: do you think that this could be realistic? And what it was numbers for rookies as starters. And you got Evan Mobley, who's like 15-8, Cade Cunningham 17-5-5, Jalen Green 15 points a game, everybody's favorite Mo Wagner 15 and a half and 4.5 rebounds, almost 5 rebounds. Scotty Barnes 15-7. All those guys have started for the entire season pretty much. And then you got Davion Mitchell, who I think in 11 starts, he's 18 points a game, 5 rebounds. He's shooting about 47% from the field. In your opinion, is that a small sample size thing with Davion, or do you really believe, like some other people might see those numbers and believe, that if he was given starter minutes and he was given the same opportunities that a Franz Wagner or Jalen Green were given, that he could put up those numbers given the same opportunity?
Well, I'll answer it in a weird way. There's no way that's ever going to happen. So like what he's doing right now is fine. It's fine, but it's not just that he's doing it like he's getting starter minutes, right?
Mhm.
But he's getting starter minutes without De'Aaron Fox, without Sabonis. Even go back to earlier in the year, without Buddy Hield, without Tyrese Halliburton. And so I don't know that he's not to me a frontline starter. Like I could be wrong. Like he
Mhm.
could develop and keep going and just be really, really good. But I think that there's going to be times where he can do this because there's not a lot of people around him, and sort of everyone has to step up and do something that maybe they wouldn't normally do. In a normal situation, I think Davion can average 14 points a game as like your secondary scorer off the bench, not a primary scorer off the bench, but your lead ball handler and secondary scorer off the bench. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he steps up and next season he starts next to De'Aaron Fox and he averages 18 a game as like a knockdown 3-point shooter off ball, and then shares duties on occasion. But I just don't think that there's a way that we'll ever get to see him in a true setting like this outside of an injury situation where he's going to be given carte blanche to do whatever the heck he wants. And I think he's been really good. I think he's been really fun. I think he's getting, like, the experience he's getting is like immeasurable. Like, you cannot like put a value on how much he's learning and getting from this experience right now, which is perfect. This is what the end of the season when you're a bad team is about. It's about bringing along a young player, giving him opportunity, having him flourish in that opportunity, setting yourself up for a great summer where he now has a bunch of ideas of what he can do to get better and what he needs to work on. And so, yeah, that's how I would kind of look at it. It is a small sample size, but it's also a skewed sample size, how I would put it, because, is there going to be a time where he gets 21 shots or 18 shots or 19 shots? Because that's kind of what he's doing. And the answer is no. Like, there probably isn't going to be that moment.
You're listening to Dealing with KC along with 1320 Kings insider James Ham here on ESPN 1320 KIFM West Sacramento, KRXQ HD2 Sacramento, and Odyssey Station. And driven by Lasher's Elk Grove Dodge. You talked about the skewed sample size, the small sample size. This is of him, obviously, as a starter, and the numbers that he's putting up. This next 8 games, you take all of those games that he's been the starter. Like, do you think that'll easily be able to translate into the role that you just laid out, where he is the backup occasionally? He has to step in. He's more in that 6-man role, more of that off the bench role. Do you think that's easily transferable, or is he going to go through an adjustment period next preseason, the beginning of next season, and so on?
Yeah, I think it's transferable.
Because they're two really different roles, right? Like, we're talking about two very different things.
Yeah, they're very different roles. And like, I don't see him as like, even if he is coming off the bench and he's your scorer, one of your scorers off the bench, like, he's not a Terrence Davis type scorer. Like, what he's doing right now is like starter in the flow. He's the primary as a starter and all that stuff. That's how you're getting to 25 points and 28 points a game. But I don't see him as a Jamal Crawford or, I don't know, why do I always forget Williams' first name? Lou Williams. He's not that type of guy. So I've compared him quite a few times to Ty Lawson. Like, he does remind me a lot of Ty Lawson, just like the way that he's able to handle the ball and all that stuff. If he comes back next season and he's determined to be one of those types of guys, but also bring the defensive intensity, then, man, I think he can be a really, really like a 6-man of the year candidate nonstop. But I have the problem, like, if he can't be a full-time starter. I mean, maybe he can be, but I don't think he's 6 foot tall. And so you're going to play him next to De'Aaron Fox, who's 6'3". You're going to run up against much bigger players all the time. And I don't think it's fair. We've seen him get lit up by like Jason Tatum and Chris Middleton. Like, I'm not going to hold that stuff against him because that's just ridiculous. He should never be guarding 6'8", 6'9" guys. But there are also other like smaller guards. I mean, like regular size guards that have done the same thing. They've gone over the top of him repeatedly. So it's just tough. I think he's going to be better against second team guys. But I still think he's a really good rotational player. I mean, I think the Kings found another rotational piece, a top 8 of the rotation guy that is going to play, next season, probably 26 to 30 minutes a game. He's going to get a lot of run unless they totally change the dynamic of this team.
Yeah. I don't know. I go back and forth with whether or not he can start at the 2. A lot of the times I think just like you do, James, like it would just be too small most nights. And I know he's I agree with you. He's maybe 6 feet, maybe 5'11", but he's so physical and he knows how to use his height or lack thereof to his advantage as far as being able to get into other shooting guards or guys that are taller than him and disrupt what they want to do more times than not. You try to post them up. I'm not saying he can't get post up, but it's not easy. It's almost like Isaiah Thomas, the new Isaiah Thomas, right? Like you would think, oh, you have to put him on the block, but he was solid. Like I saw guards try to post him up, and it wasn't as easy as it would look. And I feel like Davion has some of that to him. Of course, there's going to be moments like Devin Booker had the other night where Davion's playing perfect defense and he's just not tall enough to affect those shots. But Devin Booker does that against guys who are 6'5" too. So you know what I'm saying? Like if you're using that as your measuring stick, that's a little unfair to Davion. I don't know. I'm not going to say I have a feel one way or another whether or not you can start him. I would say this: you would have loved to see what it looked like here in the end of the season if they were in a different situation. But obviously, we're not going to get that opportunity.
Yeah, and someone asked a really good question here in the chatty house. Did I have the same feeling, Soren Smith, did I have the same feeling about Isaiah Thomas? And the answer is no, because Isaiah took the opportunity and said, I don't care, and did what he did playing alongside DeMarcus Cousins and Rudy Gay. He did it with the starters. He stepped in and said, like, I'm taking the job. Like, you guys can just get out of my way. I'm taking the job. And not only that, but didn't they have Tyreek Evans? Like, he just stepped in and was like, hey, this is who I am. I'm going to be this guy, and you guys get out of the way.
Isaiah was so good, you couldn't keep him off the court. Like, you could not keep, and I wasn't even at practice, but just watch him in the games. Like, he had to be playing because he was so good offensively.
I think I told you guys this. The first practice, Paul Westphal, we got done with the scrum. Everyone started to walk away. It was nothing but questions about Jimmer. Paul Westphal pulled me aside and said, this Isaiah kid is incredible. And I'm like, really? I said, so he's going to make the team? Because he was a 60th pick. He goes, he's going to do a lot more than make the team. He's going to be a stud. And I'm like, really? He goes, yeah, this dude is a stud. All right. Sounds good.
Well, you're spot on.
He, in fact, was.
Yeah.
And you traded him for Alex Oriaki and
the great Alex Oriaki.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I ain't going to lie to you. James, Damian, maybe I'm speaking in hyperbole. Maybe I'm just, speaking in blasphemy. Isaiah Thomas hurts me as much, if not more, than not getting Luka. I thought probably because you had Isaiah Thomas. You had him. Like, you knew what he was. Like, this guy was legit. Everybody with Pete D'Alessandro was like, yo, this guy's the real deal in the league. Like, there are no more questions. He's the real deal.
He convinced other people of that. Like when they didn't match, I had a discussion with Vivek. We were at Summer League. Vivek taps us on the corner, on the shoulder, me and John Santiago. And he said, hey, what do you guys think of Darren Collison? And I said, you should have just kept Isaiah. And it wasn't a knock on Darren. He goes, what do you mean? And we're like, John and I were like, you guys blew it. He goes, well, he's not a starter. I'm like, well, he was a starter for you and averaged 20 points and 7 assists a game. And he goes, well, yeah, but then he got a bunch of money. And I'm like, no, he got a 3-year, $21 million contract. And last year you paid Carl Landry a 3-year, $24 million, I believe it was, knowing that Carl Landry was never a starter in the league. And you paid him to be a bench guy. So even if you think he's a bench guy, you should have brought him back at 3 years and 7. $7 million a year. Like, are you kidding? And he was just taken aback that we were questioning. And it's like, look, man, you've been in odor for like 5 minutes between the Warriors and the Kings at that point. Like, literally, we've covered basketball for a long time at that point. We've had like I know the game of basketball really well. It's what I do. So like, I was kind of caught off guard. He was caught off guard. I was caught off guard that they invited us to go see Darren Collison's signing, and then they brought in fans. And
yes, I love to do that.
Yeah.
On that note, we're going to let James go on and get his Fridays.